Welcome to some Christmas ideas with GourmetQuilter. I'm Susan Clare, GourmetQuilter. Throughout 2020 we're doing lots of different things, and this time we're doing 20 Christmas ideas, and we are up to idea number 19. So we are nearly through them. It's going to be a shame when we finish, but there's more other things to come, so it's okay. So we have been making all sorts of things, and this time we're going to make a fun little conical Santa. We've made some little conical trees, and we just thought we'd have a little Santa friend to go with them. So there's a lot of similarities. The construction is the same, but the Santa himself is done just a little bit differently because we've got to applique and do some different things to get the shapes. So I've gone ahead and we know how to do a fair bit of this starting stuff. We've cut out our shape. I haven't cut my little top corner off yet. I might just do that before I forget entirely. We do that so that we can get the point to come out nicely at the top here. I should mention too, there is a pattern on GourmetQuilter.com with all the shapes and things there. In case you're interested, there's more information on GourmetQuilter.com. So back to the Santa. So he's looking pretty much the same as the trees were. We've got a band coming around here, we've got his beard, we've got a little face in there, we've got a little moustache and a hat band. So just a little bit more in the way of cutting out some bits and pieces. So his face is really just a shape that sits in behind the beard. So what I've suggested is that we start with the square of the white fabric for the beard, and there are two squares of the red, so one for in and one for outside, and then we just need that little bit of extra colour for the face. So, and the fusible web, I've suggested we just really only need enough to fill that square. If we cut that corner off before we iron it to the white fabric, because we don't need that section, we can actually use it for the hat and for the face as well. The hat just needs a little bit of sticky just on the lower edge of the hat, not the whole hat, just a small band. So that's what this little band fitting in here, and I just have done it this way so that I could show you that everything has come out of that one piece of fusible web there. So when we cut out for the front of the Santa, this is the outside covering, and because he's got the hat here that sits above the top of the hair and beard, we need to cut his hat away from the square initially, so that we can then come in and put some of these other bits in, and then we just need to put a little bit of the fusible web around that rim, because that will have to sit over the top of where his hair and beard are going. So I'll probably need to do some of this in between. I need to cut his face out. I need to iron the hat band. Now the hat band, because it needs to be cut the same size, we probably need to cut that first, that edge. I don't often do that, but in actual fact we do need that edge to be pretty much cut already, because it's cut the right size when we cut it out of the square there for his body. And because we only really want a narrow strip, we might as well cut the whole piece out rather than having all those other bits sitting behind. We don't really need any extra bulk going up to the top of the Santa. So this piece here can just go on the back of that lower edge of the hat there. So that we'll do it now, and then it's all ready. So that's all looking pretty good. Just put it to the edge. And you can actually trim some of the fusible if you needed to, rather than the fabric, because we kind of need the fabric as it is. So we could just give ourselves a nice edge there by just trimming up any excess of the fusible web and trying to leave a nice edge of the fabric there. So that's looking pretty good. I've got the face to cut out, and I've got this. So what I'm suggesting that we do on this one is cut a band out of this white on the curve like this, rather than when we did the trees we did a little straight strip, but we've got the opportunity here of cutting it actually the shape we want it. So I think that's a really good idea. So we can cut the band. I'm not going to cut it all in front of you, I'm sure you know how to cut. But just to show you what we've got to cut the band, and then there's another band up here around his his hat. So we can cut that band out here, and where that joins the beard here, remember there's already white fabric on the back of this. We're going to cut away the face part. That's going to sit over the face. The face was that separate colour piece. So we don't need that little piece because we've got this piece coming in behind there. And then we just need to cut out his hair and beard all as one piece. So I'll go ahead and get these all cut, and then I'll show you how we start putting him to, oh, and then he's got the rest of the hat band and the moustache there. So I'll go ahead and get these cut out and then show you how we get the rest of it all done. So I've gone ahead and I've cut out all my beard, my moustache, the band, the hat band, the face. So I've started positioning just the face at the moment. It just goes in the middle under this. So the next thing to do would be to put the beard and hair on, and we need to do the decorative and applique stitching on that next. So if I just position this so I can see what I'm doing, we want this just to overlap that red a little bit because the hat is going to come down to that line. So just coming up a bit so that we've got something to tuck under the hat, and it's good to have it under the hat because we're going to do a little bit of decorative stitching on it for some curly sort of hair and things, which I'll show you in a minute. And then it can go on here. We've got some little curly bits. I'm not sure if you can see those. It's not a strong colour that I've used. It's a sort of goldy colour, but they can go up on the white into the bit that goes under the hat, so that those little ends don't really show and don't cause us any problems. So I'm just going to iron that all in place. Now I've got one of these Teflon mats because I'm using a fusible product here. I just don't want to get that on my iron. So now I'm just going to iron around to get the beard all on. We don't need to iron anything else on just at the moment because it's really getting this decorative part done that we need to do. I can tidy myself up here a little bit. And we can put the moustache on a little bit later too because we really need to do this sewing on his beard first. So I've got the machine all set up to do free motion. I've got a goldy sort of coloured thread in. I've got my feed teeth down and a little open toe free motion foot. And so on him here, I've done some little curls down here, but I've outlined everything as well. So I could start off by maybe outlining all the way around the edge here. And so I'm just stitching on the beard, but just close to the edge. So I think you can see how that's all done. So I'll go ahead and finish all the outlining and then I'll come and show you some of the decorative bits as well. So I've started doing some of his hair around here. So it's just little free motion wiggles really. So I'll just keep going. So because we're going to be covering over the top there, we can use that to run along with that bit there. And so then I'm just free motioning. And I'll do a little swirl here, and then I'm coming back, but I'm not trying to sew on the line. It's specifically not sewing on the line in general. And then so it really is kind of like a double line of stitching. And I'm just coming around. I'm using the little line around the face. There's another line to come along as well. And we'll do one down the centre here. So I'm just wobbling this second line along over that first one. It just gives it a little bit more texture. And it's fun anyway. This is really playing. Playing with purpose, we'll call it, shall we? So much fun. I think up here we'll come along in here again. So you could use some decorative threads for this. And I do find that sometimes metallics can cause a problem, so I don't often use them. But a metallic or rayon or something is good. I'm just using a cotton thread of a colour that I quite liked. And so this is nearly done already. It doesn't take long. So that's looking kind of fun, a little bit twirly, a little bit hairy. And now he just needs to have his moustache put on as well. So the moustache is really just two big sort of shapes that come out from the centre, overlapping the lower part of his face. Around about here, I think. And then I'm just going to outline, like I did on the outline of the edge here, I'll do the same thing on the moustache. So I could probably go ahead and get that done. Now these little twirls come up, kind of up the side here a little bit. It's quite a magnificent moustache that he has. Swirling up there, I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to iron the moustache on. It's easy to forget these little things. And then I'm going to start stitching it, probably out from one of the points, and then we can do, I'm just outlining it so we can just come along, and we can do them both. We can just run onto the other one. When I get here, I can come onto this one and come around this one as well. Thread sitting there, I think there was. And we can just finish off this one back out here. So he's looking pretty good. So we can start ironing some of the other pieces on now, like we can get the hat on. So just peel off this little bit of backing here so that I can position the hat. So the hat's going to sit over the top of that top of the hairline there. It leaves a little bit of his face showing, so we'll be able to give him some eyes. He does like to see where he's going. And he can have his hat band and the other band on now too. And so they'll just be straight stitched on. There's no need to free motion them. You can free motion them, but we don't need to free motion them now. So the hat band just sits a little bit up. And things might move a little bit. The hat band might be a touch long now. That doesn't matter. We can always trim that down. And then there's the other band, which is cut to shape for around that lower edge. Remember, we've got that stiff behind. I did mark it the same as I did when we did the trees. I've used that, I have a yellow mechanical marker so that I can mark it onto different colours. And we'll just bring that up a little bit. So this part very similar to the trees, except that this is already cut to shape. We didn't have to do a straight piece on this one. So just keep it a fairly even distance from that drawn lower edge there. And try and make sure that at each end it's a similar distance if you can, because that's where it's going to join in the back here, so it's kind of nice if it does match up. Just going to trim off that little extra bit there and here so that it doesn't iron to my ironing board. And I can iron those in place now, and then I'm just going to go back to the machine and I'll go ahead and do that. It's just going to be straight stitch, but I'm going to change my thread to a red thread. I think it's quite nice to have something nice and red on the white there rather than It could be white, doesn't have to be red. But I think it's quite nice for the red stitching on the white now. So I'll go ahead and stitch red either side of the white there, red around the bottom of the hat there, and red either side of the white there. So I've gone ahead, I've stitched the hat band on, I've stitched the hat on. I didn't yet do the stitching on the lower band because we do that once we've turned the lining in. So this part is now the same, if you've seen me doing the little trees, this is done the same way now. So I've put my lining square right sides together, and I've just stitched around right next to my white stiffening. So not on the stiffening, not apart, not away from it, just right next to it. So now I can just trim that seam there, and we can press that over, and then I can stitch that white band in place. This is kind of fun, I quite like this part. So we just need to push that seam out as nicely as we can there. Press that around, and then again pull it in as much as, just to get that seam as nice and firm around that stiffening as we can on that lower edge. And so now I can go ahead and stitch along the two edges of the white band through all layers, so that holds that lower edge for me. And then I'm just going to do, like I did on the trees, I'm going to do a little zigzag on these two raw edges, just overcast, just in the right on the very edge, just so that when the seam is exposed, which it will be inside, that it's nice and neat and can't unravel inside. So I'll go ahead and I'll get all that done, and we just then got to sew him up and turn him out and then give him a face, because he does like to see. So I'll go ahead and get all my neatening and this band on. So I'd like to say he's looking good, but he's not actually looking at all because he hasn't got any eyes yet. However, we're going to sew him up now, just like we did with the trees. I'm just going to bring those two edges together, and we're just going to sew next to our stiffening in that seam allowance there, all the way up to the point here. I've done the neatening on those edges with the zigzag. Don't forget, when you go to a zigzag stitch, you need sometimes to put a different foot on your machine, depends what you're sewing with, so that the needle can swing happily without getting caught up and breaking. It's not a good thing. I'm just going to sew right as far as possible, right next to the stiff stuff, and because it's fairly thick, you can usually get an idea where it is. And because I snipped off that little point at the top, it should turn out okay. This is the fun part. So I'm just going to trim that point, but instead of just going straight across, I'm just actually going to trim it down at an angle. It just lessens the amount. It's a fairly sharp point up there. Any other stray threads hanging around, and we should be able to turn them out the right way now. It seems a little harsh to squash him like this, but he seems to come out of it all right. I've got my trusty chopstick today to use my trusty pencil instead. I just need to try and push that out as much as we can without it bunching. You don't want to sort of bunch into a clump, because that stiff stuff needs to come through better than that. Here it comes. Beautiful point up the top there. And I think he needs a face, but I think I'm just going to do my little heat trick on him now because he just looks a little bit crumpled. I'd be feeling a little crumpled if I'd just been through that, I have to say. So I'm not really ironing it, I'm just letting the heat, because my hand's in there, I don't want to hold it there too long anyway, but it just warms it and it just allows it all to settle quite nicely. So I think that's looking pretty good. So we just need to give him some eyes and a nose. So that very simple little faces. He can have a little red nose just above his moustache here. And I'm just using these permanent Micron pens. So his moustache should be coming up over his nose a little bit like that. You might have a different way of doing faces. This is how I usually do them. And then if you're not sure where to put the eyes, sometimes I just pop a couple of, and I can find them, coloured pins. I'm a bit short on coloured pins. There are some marks in the pattern, but when you're actually on him, you need to have a little look at where you think you're going to put them. And I think so by putting the pins in, you actually create a little pinhole in the fabric so that you can see. So if you're happy with where you had your pins, you can just do some little eyes here. Just some little dots, maybe slightly oval, slightly tallish rather than wideish. And I don't think he really needs any more than that personally. However, when you make yours, you can do them however you like. So now he's got a little friend, little Santa buddies. And the other thing is, of course, that they do fit in with our little trees. So they're the little missing shapes. So when we put them inside these trees, when we don't want to look at them anymore, he's hiding. He loves to hide in the trees. So that sort of completed the little nesting set. I hope you've enjoyed the little Santa, and that was Christmas idea number 19. I will see you again with the final number 20.